everyone. A warm welcome to all the guests and members from IBPC Dubai. Before we start the presentation and the panel discussion today, please welcome Mr. Dilip Sinha, Secretary General of IBPC, for the opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, CB. Good morning and namaste, everyone, and salam alaikum. I welcome all the distinguished IBPC members and guests who have joined today's webinar. Energy. It's expensive. It has a direct impact on our operating costs of companies. It also has an impact on the climate in terms of the carbon footprint. How do we save energy? How do we improve bottom line using technology, using human skills? That's going to be the topic of today's discussion. Manage your profitability through innovative energy management. We have a distinguished panelist and moderator for this discussion to go forward. I would like to introduce each one of them. The session will be moderated by Mr. Gautam Sengupta, who is an ex-Tata Administrative Services guy. He was in early 90s, Regional General Manager of Taj Group in the Middle East. He's also promoter and director of Market Vision and Research Services and led the formation of Grass Education and Upskilling Program in India. He's past president of TAI, ex-IIM Calcutta and IIT Kharagpur. Then we have Mr. Dilip Khatwani. Most of you from IBPC know him. He's the CEO of Reliance FM Facility Management Company, and which operates in Middle East and UK. He brings with him over 25 years of experience with asset management. He's the convener of construction, real estate, and related services focus group within Indian Business and Professional Council, Dubai. He'll be talking from the customer perspective. He's a BTech and postgraduate in marine engineering. Then we have Mohammed Husseini, who is from Honeywell Building Technologies and is responsible for Middle East, Turkey, and Africa. Has worked in smart cities, critical infrastructure, energy management programs. He's also the district general manager for UAE, leads HBT in energy optimization efforts, IoT, and cloud connection. He will share the technology aspect from Honeywell. Then we have Sagatha Nandi, who is the founder and CEO of 3 Advisory involved in advising and implementing energy conservation programs. He's an ex-IIT Hawaii. He's also the ex-CEO of Pacific Control. I think it was from 2012 to 15, and has led many LEED certified projects. He will share his perspective on the human skill and others in improving the operating profitability and reducing the cost, saving energy and its impact. Just before I pass on to Gautam Sengupta, just for those distinguished guests who have joined today, Indian Business and Professional Council is the largest body of business in terms of the collection of professional and business community of Indian diaspora and Emiratis. It falls under Dubai Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And we welcome Indian and Emirati guests to join Indian Business Council. So I welcome you all to today's webinar, and to take it forward, I pass it on to Mr. Gautam Sengupta. Gautam, all yours.
Thank you, Dilip. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of IBPC and our guests. And thank you very much for joining us today. Dilip, thank you for introducing the panelists and myself. Greatly appreciate that. For this session, first, let's get our timings in place. It's a Saturday, and obviously we don't want to keep you away from family for too long. So the main session with panelists will be limited to between 30 and 45 minutes. During this session, each question that I ask of a panelist will be answered in 2 to 3 minutes. Then we would like to invite audience questions for about 10 to 15 minutes, which you may ask directly of individual panelists. Please write your questions in the Q&A box that is next to the participants icon at the bottom of your screen. And you could put these questions in whenever you like through the session, and I will access them there to be able to then ask those questions at the end of the main session when we have our Q&A from the audience. The idea today is to project innovative cost-saving opportunities that can be of immediate, practicable value to you. Project some new ways that can help your profitability, and with a view to offering you suggestions that are actionable today, as I say. To get straight into the subject, we are all aware that UAE businesses have been witnessing challenges for some years now. It began well before COVID, but it is a fact that COVID came and hurt businesses even more and made the environment in which we are doing business even more challenging. Revenues have suffered. We are fighting to lift revenues. But even today, few businesses are able to see a clear path which takes them to revenue growth in the very near future. So what is the result of that? The result of that is that it has become necessary for us to shift our focus from top line growth, which is revenue growth, to bottom line growth, which is profit growth. And not necessarily even profit growth, but maintenance of profit levels that we have been able to achieve in the past. Now that has meant reducing our costs, but in a way that would not impact revenues negatively. Plus, we have a focus on cash conservation. No unnecessary expenses, postpone unavoidable but expected expenses. So we have all cut costs. We've gone down that route. We have cut staff. Staff has been put on furlough. We have cut advertising. We have cut training. We have squeezed our suppliers. We have downgraded travel. Now we've done all the traditional things. But now, traditional ways of cost cutting have more or less been exhausted. And that is what I keep hearing in the marketplace from friends and other people that I meet. The need now is for innovative methodologies to be adopted in cost savings in order for us to be able to sustain our businesses in the manner that we want going forward. So my first question is to Dilip. Dilip, would you agree with this, all that I've said? In your FM work, you are exposed to clients across a multitude of industry sectors, somebody in education, somebody in healthcare, somebody in hospitality, manufacturing. Have you been seeing severe cost cuts all over across your clients? Could you
Gautam,
tell us a little bit on that, Dilip?
The question, Gautam. I mean, first to take your comment on the bottom line and the top line. You know, I'm of a firm belief that you have to be married to the bottom line and not to the top line. As entrepreneurs, as CEOs of companies, as directors of companies, when we are kind of running our businesses or representing companies to run our businesses, we typically get attached more to the revenue, more to the top line than to the bottom line. I think the biggest challenge is this, that in case CEOs and directors detach themselves from the revenue, attach themselves to the bottom line, not saying don't look at revenue, you have to be definitely building up revenue. But if your attachment is more towards the bottom line, you will not come to the situation you have come. That's one comment. Your question on whether different industry types have been suffering because of lack of revenue and cost optimization, yes, definitely. You know, in our field of work, we work with various industries, right? from retail to F&B to office to residential to government. We see a big impact on various industries, such as retail. I can tell you retail has been majorly affected last year, and thereby we see in terms of facility management, the approach from retail has become more on condition-based maintenance rather than preventive maintenance. Retail clients are coming back to us and saying that, look, our footfalls have gone down. We don't see revenues coming in, so we have to optimize costs. And there we see that they have optimized costs like this. We see a big impact on travel and tour industries. Our clients of travel and tour industries, we have lost few of our clients because the travel tour has been majorly affected. The other elements which we see is in the office commercial buildings as well. Because of last year of COVID, we saw very few people operating from their offices, people who are operating from homes. So we see the footfalls and the occupancy rates within offices have reduced. Thereby, the impact has come on to service charges. I know of one of the commercial buildings which we manage, we had to optimize or reduce the service charge by almost 25% to sustain that. So yes, I agree. There's a definite impact news, and thereby we have to manage. I want to comment that in the world of business, I realize that we are in a competitive market. And in terms of various categories of companies, we see there's not much of difference in terms of revenue, right? So if you're a FM company or a real estate company or a PG company, you don't see great difference in terms of their top lines if you're at that level. But the only way you can make a difference to your company is optimizing. I think this whole focus on focus to change from revenue built up to optimizing cost or maintaining that balance is very critical. That's for me.
Perfect. Thank you, Dilip. Mohammed, would you like to add something here from your experience?
Definitely, Gautam. So, especially today when we see that a lot of owners and FM companies, developers, today, they have a challenge of missing a new construction in this situation with the COVID. The demand is coming less, as we know all that we need to manage what we have today. So instead of going for a new projects, a new construction, people would like to save what they are operating today and see how much they can improve their profitability and revenue. So we looked a lot about what's happening today. The technology we are providing, for example, with us and Honeywell, we are always able to provide a comfort, safe, and secure system. But then with the development of the platform and software, we're looking at how to improve the energy saving and how to reduce the cost of the running energy. So any single dollar or dirham you're able to reduce in spending energy today, you will be able to, again, go direct to the bottom line profit. So that will be managing your growth in a different way. Yeah. And today, the energy optimization and saving is giving a range of 20 to 30 or even 40% of saving of the running cost. So you can imagine how much saving you're able to do year after year. And this will be a kind of asset for you for the future. So in that way, you are able to maintain in the building in a better way, in a more comfortable way, and sustain energy for the future. At the end, with the reduction of cost, everybody will be able to benefit from that saving for the revenue, and also optimizing the operations. So digitalized maintenance nowadays is a KPI of all the operators, how to make it more efficient, how to reduce the man-hour resources, and how to use the technology in a better way. So we see this is helping a lot of customers. From our discussion today, we are able to make the machine learning and artificial intelligence, which you use to have it for the smart buildings, smart cities, able to also benefit for the energy saving. And that's a key part of the technology provided today to add benefit for the bottom lines.
Thank you. Thank you. So from all that Mohammed and Dilip have said, it becomes quite clear, and frankly, we all knew it. We do need to innovate for a more sustainable business model in our businesses all across, but without compromising our service standards. Because if we compromise our service standards, then we run the risk of impacting our revenues negatively. Now, one way could be through the use of new technologies, and Mohammed alluded to that in a sense. Are companies using new technologies to save on cost? Are some of these new technologies artificial intelligence based, machine learning based, robotics based? Are they in use? Are they helping? And do these methodologies need high capex investment? Because if that is true, then we probably have a problem, because that goes against our ongoing efforts to conserve cash. Sagatha, what is your view here? You have had some experience in these areas, AI, facial recognition, etc. What do you have to say?
So thank you, Gautam. Good morning, everybody. Gautam, to be honest with you, in spite of having 2 degrees in energy engineering from the IITs almost 30 years back, I realized that I'm still learning the whole concept of energy management. And if anything, the pandemic has actually accelerated or catalyzed our whole approach towards energy conservation. I'm sure everybody in the audience must have heard of the Pareto principle, where we talk of 80% of the results come from 20% of the areas, or with 20% of the efforts. The pandemic has actually forced us to look at that remaining 20%, which has typically always been the non-low-hanging fruits in energy conservation. So now today you cannot just go and say, I got my 15-20% energy savings and I'm pretty happy with that by this 20% of the effort. Now you're forced as a business to look at even areas which will give you that additional 1% savings, 2% savings, everything, because you are literally scraping the bottom of the barrel today. So just to take a step back, over practicing energy management over the last 24 years across multiple countries, we need to look at energy conservation or energy management from a completely different perspective, in addition to the traditional ways of looking at Pareto principle, low-hanging fruits, etc. So let me explain what I mean by that. Often the perception is that to reduce energy consumption, you have to look at your HVAC or air conditioning equipment, central AC plants. You have to look at your building automation system. You have to look at in manufacturing industries, your process lines, how you operate them, where wastage is happening, so on and so forth. Those are the obvious ones. And I think Mohammed and Dilip both will agree that the technology today is sufficiently advanced to be able to take care of that. What many times we do not realize is that there is another set of industry which are very labor intensive, which are not process oriented. So typically, if you take a building or a facility management company itself is a labor intensive company. Now, every energy consumption, to assign the responsibility of high energy bills just to the equipment is not fair to the equipment, in my opinion. The MEP equipment consumes energy because there are people who are utilizing it at the end, the last mile or the demand side of things. So now if we have to look at the additional 1%, 2% energy cost savings without investing any money, or without investing significant amount of money, we have to look at all the repetitive tasks that our employees do, or are the tasks being duplicated? Because the longer an employee stays inside the office, or the longer the employee is doing work, it will lead to energy consumption, which is obviously, if we can deploy artificial intelligence, facial verification to eliminate repetitive and duplicative work, that itself will improve productivity and reduce the burden on the energy consuming equipment. Just to round it off, yes, sometimes some of these technologies can have high capital cost, but however, I think the industry, the software industry has evolved significantly. Today, you get everything as software as a service, and therefore, the capital cost is not required any longer, and you just go, you just pay as you go for the services that you take. So I think the industry has has been responding even before the pandemic, and I think those facilities are significantly welcome by the end users today.
Thank you, Sagatha. Some of the points that you've raised, I'd like to take up with Mohammed a little later, because he'll be able to talk to us from the perspective of the industry sector that he represents. But Dilip, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, see, my challenge to technology and AI and so on and so forth is that the cost involved is quite high, right? But I'm not sure whether the technology is made user-friendly. I'm not sure whether technologies which we have come up with in terms of energy management, they value for money. Can we utilize the full extent of the technology which we are giving it to apply? Can they be used by the operator on the ground instead of just the engineers on the top? You know, so that's one of my challenges to technologies which are available. And second element is, I agree we need to innovate, okay, but one of the things I see, at least in the building scenario, is that what really makes a difference is following the process. Technology has its importance, but we have seen in our buildings that we could buy a BMS system, okay? In case we don't have we could buy a BMS system, which is expensive, getting value. If we don't put the process of making sure that the process of switching off, switching on lights is followed, a process of making sure that we have alternate lighting in the building, process of making sure that in the night there are timers which switch off the lights, of the chillers, or you know, unload and load the chillers. You could have the BMS there, you could have the best technology there. Finally, are we following the process within buildings? You know, for me, a process follow-up is sometimes more important or more effective than having a technology.
Dilip, if I could interrupt you here, I'd like to bring Mohammed in, because he will be able to talk with us in specific, you know, on the technology and the products that are available. And I'd like to come back to you, Dilip, on exactly the kind of, you know, points that you're making. Right. Let's focus now on electricity cost saving, because at the end of the day in energy, the large proportion of energy is not coal-fired stoves in the UAE or gas-fired cookers. It is electricity, you know. And this is, in a sense, sometimes then a neglected area. It should not be. It should not be, because it's a significant cost in many industries. 33% of revenue is what is consumed by electricity expense in the aluminium manufacturing industry. 16% in steel making. Cold chain warehousing can take up to 9 to 17% electricity as you know, as expense part of revenue. I know in the hotel industry, which I'm directly familiar with, it could be anywhere between 4 and 8%. Hospitals, another 12%. Now, you look at just a 10% saving in this. You know, if you have an expense which is 10% of your revenue, and you're able to save 10% of that, that means 1% of revenue. Now, who doesn't want to collect 1% of revenue to be able to invest in other things, you know? Now, add to that the fact that by saving electricity, you are also contributing in the worldwide fight against climate change. Then there is PR value. If you are a green company, an eco-friendly company, you are more in line with the Uae Energy Strategy for 2050. I mean, the returns are huge, but I'd love to hear from Mohammed on what are your views here. You know, you have so much knowledge of products, both in your company that you mentioned, Honeywell, as well as in others where you worked in Siemens, Schneider, etc. To save energy cost in buildings, businesses, through BMSs that Dilip mentioned, etc., you know, would you give us a little bit of an input on that?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, all of these points are really touching the core of the energy saving. Now, we talk about the initial cost of projects. So it is like the iceberg. You know, you only see the tip of the iceberg, but underneath, it's like 100 times more than what you see at the top. So the initial cost of the projects, the CapEx, is nothing compared to the OpEx. So operation, if you look at the full life cycle of project, operation is more costlier than the CapEx. And there is a focus where you are able to do some energy saving there. So I touch base on the initial, let's say, technology starting with the BMS. As Dilip mentioned, very important point. It's not about the technology only. You can bring the best system, you deploy it, it's running, but if you don't operate it well, if you don't put the right process how to do it, this is a big challenge. Now that nowadays the technology is being developed, it comes with more, let's say, built-in kind of a process. It's like an autopilot. Like you just need to enable it with your airplane, you enable the autopilot, then it is flying by itself. And nowadays, this is how the technology provides for the building. It's like an autopilot. You start, you commission, you hand over, you make the system running properly. Then you connect the building to the cloud. And this cloud connection enables a lot of benefit for the building owner. From it, you can see in case any trouble going to happen, before it happens, it gives you an alarm. Anything that goes outside the normal process will give you a notification that there is something wrong there. And comes with the nowadays, the social media, the communication enable all of that empowerment. Now, when you talk about the autopilot, the benefit when you connect the cloud, you don't see your building alone anymore. As a building owner, for sure, you are interested for your own building. But then the system see your building and see other buildings around the region and the global, and then to say, okay, by the way, you are doing well in these 4 points. The other 5 points, there's good ideas that you can enable, and that's how we look at the similar building in another place in Abu Dhabi or in Riyadh or in Kuwait, for example, and that gives you feedback how to operate in a better way. So this kind of a cycle of enabling from the cloud gives each 15 minutes a new input to the system by itself, no need for a human-man interface, and then it will improve the energy saving by the minute you are moving. So this is a real example of an autopilot or artificial intelligence and machine learning. Today, especially in our area here, the highest consumption is on the AC, air conditioning. It's a very hot in the summer, and everybody knows we have to have the AC running 24/7. And this goes into the electricity bill, as you mentioned, Gautam. So anything saving in the chillers and the air handling units, which pumping the cold air into the rooms and making us all work in a comfortable way, the small saving there is a big saving overall at the end of the month and at the end of the year. Perfect. Now, the algorithm of the systems gives you that saving by changing some of the loops, changing some of the control logic, that will improve the savings.
Perfect, perfect. But the reality, Mohammed, and this is what I keep hearing in the marketplace, is that the traditional methods for electricity cost saving with technology are high capex with long payback periods. Now, whether it be change the chillers that you allude to, or it be the BMSs that Dilip mentioned, or it be putting solar panels up on the roof. These are all very high cost technology based products. But today we are in a time where we want to conserve cash. We don't want to expend the cash that we are holding on high capex, long payback period products. And I'd really like to get your views on this. Dilip, what do you feel? What have been, you began to talk about a few of these, but what are some of the constraints that you have felt, working with your energy saving consultants, whether with clients or in your own buildings, Would you give us throw some light on that?
Yeah, I'd first like to comment on Mohammed mentioned the cloud-based system where you can energize buildings, you can, you could actually manage PMS systems or energy management of buildings on cloud remote wherever you are. But the challenge and reality to the buildings today in the Middle East or abroad is that finally buildings are not like aeroplanes, where the execution is to the T and there's 0.0009% of error allowed and so on and so forth. Buildings get executed, there's so much of error. the handovers and the takeovers are mismanaged.
100%.
Before the building is completed, you would have changed 3 or 4 contractors to finally complete the building. So this is where maintainers like us or operators like us, although we'd like to have an ideal building takeover, but we don't get an ideal building takeover. Yeah, and that's where we have to manage the process the way it comes through, and the BMS which was installed is not ideally doing its job. I mean, I can give you example of few of the buildings where we have hired consultants to come and optimize the energy. So we hired one consultant to manage a commercial building. We were very happy that they saved about $1 million dirham per year for us for the next 2 years. But after 2 years, we realized that whatever energy they saved, while they were doing the settings, they did some mismanagement on the settings. We had problems with Delta T. And we were getting penalized by Empower on that. So what's the point of saving 2 million when you lose that 2 million and another element in there? My challenge to the market situation is that, and a lot of consultants here, I mean, consulting seems to be the only service provision where there are no KPIs. I mean, they would ask you $1 million dirham and say, no, I cannot sign a contract with deliverables. I said, how do we go about? We took a decision lately where we were to manage a certain element. We could not find a consultant which was ready to commit to a deliverable. And then we found a solution internal solution where a deliverable was supposed to be. So my challenge to consultants to energy is this, that yes, there are very knowledgeable consultants in the market. Yes, there are great companies on energy, but on the ground, we face a lot of challenge on how to create results. And I would, request I'm actually a kind of affected party. I'd like to know from Mohammed and Mr. Nandi, how do we go about finding solutions on that?
In fact, I'm going to turn to Mohammed now and ask Mohammed, is the scenario changing?
Yeah. See,
are there new options now for clients for these tech products, where you're giving, say, we are talking about high initial cost. Are you giving a financing package? Do you have a performance management support system?
Right.
That's the kind of thing I think that we would really like to hear about.
See, all what I hear here is exactly what we have been facing as a challenges from the market. And I can tell you something. We talk always about development of technologies and development of the tools we are using. Your laptop, you need to change every 1 or 2 years. Your mobile, you are changing every time. There's always an update, firmware comes to you. So this affects the technology straightforward, but it also affects the process. We are improving the process and seeing how are the gaps and what we need to cover the gaps. So first point you raised, Gautam, is that the cost of these solutions is really high and changing a chiller, changing them. So nowadays, and I will just before going there, I will join it with the Dilip point about the operation. And both are very important, the cost, the operation. So we have taken all these points as a technology provider in Honeywell and put all together and following the international standards. So today you have an ESCO certified companies who's following the ASHRAE standard internationally. And for that, you have a certified managers, auditors, engineers, etc., to save energy. So we look at the holistic approach from the requirement to change, including the operation after. And that we take into consideration the cost of implementation. So when we do the study, we do what is the cost for the changing this equipment, connecting to the cloud, adding the technologies, and operation in the right way later on. When we study all of that together and we compare this to the energy saving, we see that at the end, the formula gives you ROI, return of investment. With this ROI, you can be very clear. All this study, you summarize it into it is a 3 years ROI, 4 years ROI, or 5 years, depends on your solution and depends on your facility. So with this all comes in a kind of a confidence of package to the owner or the developer to say, as a company like Honeywell, we have the team who's confident this is the saving and this is the initial cost, this is the ROI. We also come with the benefit of financing these jobs. So let's say, take an example of a building, we find that we are able to save energy from 10 million yearly to 7 million. So it's a kind of a 3 million saving every year. And the project cost will be something around, let's say, another 10 million. So we take the full responsibility. The customer doesn't need to pay a single dirham. We come, we do the survey. We are able to provide a program which will be saving energy after we implement. From the saving, we pay back our project cost. So that way, the confidence is there to an operator and an owner and an FM company like what Dilip mentioned. It is going to be managed, delivered, and the maintenance after that is guaranteed with the energy saving for a certain period and without any kind of financing from the customer. So that gives confidence. Yes, it is going to work. At the end, if we're not working, Honeywell provide a bank guarantee, and other companies, I'm sure that they also do the same. They provide bank guarantees in case the saving is not being met, so the owner can cash the difference of the saving to their bank. So then they are in safe hands. They know they've been promised to save a 3 million per year, and they will get 3 million at the end of the year, either from the saving or even more than that saving.
Thank you, Mohammed. That's very interesting. Before I come to Sugato, I notice that there are no questions in the Q&A box, which is not something that Dilip, Mohammed, and Sugato will appreciate much. So may I request members of the audience, if you have any questions, because at least I'm learning a lot of new stuff, in all that Mohammed is saying and Dilip and Sugato. But coming to Sugato, you have done work yourself also with building management systems, with solar panels, etc. What can you share, or what would you like to share from that experience?
I think two fundamental things, Gautam. One is, I think businesses must acknowledge and accept the fact that business as usual is not working any longer. And it is not just the pandemic. We have seen this happening in the Middle East and globally since the mid 2000s. When the global financial crisis hit us, and since then till the pandemic, one after the other crisis is coming in cycles. So business as usual is not going to work. There are other many challenges that businesses also face from the regulatory authorities, utility companies, for example. And just to link that to when I was working, I have worked as a facility management company myself, as a client and as a service provider, ESCO, as well as building automation system. So I agree with all sides of the circle. So it is not that one party is right and the other party is aggrieved. Everybody has their own right reasons for doing what they are doing. So when we started looking at energy management as a cost way back in my previous company, TCOM Group, in 2006, at that time, electricity tariff in Dubai used to be only 20 fils per unit. So the big question that time was, how do you justify energy conservation when the cost is so low? And then, luckily we had the top management who were very supportive, and they saw the long-term vision, roadmap, etc. And that's very important for corporations, by the way, to have decision makers who can see the long roadmap and understand the implications that may arise in the future. So not just plan for work for today. And then in the middle of 2007, Dubai, the Uae actually increased all the electricity tariffs by, in some cases, more than double in certain slabs. And then that was the proof, the actual proof that demonstrated that businesses must prepare for these kind of exigencies when the going is good, and not wait for the crisis to hit them and then start planning and doing things that they are forced to do at that time. So when your top line is good, when your bottom line is not under pressure, that is the time when you to start planning and executing, having a long-term roadmap ahead of you. So that's one of the comments that I would like to make. So, but having said that, well, now you have a crisis, you have not prepared for it. So now what do you do? So therefore, there are only two things that you can do. One is, as Mohammed mentioned, there are financial models. So there are financial models, offerings, and commercial contracts that service providers can offer where you don't have to invest any capex of your own as a corporation. The second thing is that you have to always understand that whether it's an ESCO model or whether it's an automation or solar, these are all the probability of success of all of this is a function of timing. So what do I mean by timing? Timing can mean multiple things. Timing could be the life cycle of your corporation, where you are, whether you are a startup or a budding corporation, whether you're a mature corporation. Timing in terms of the regulatory support sometimes that you need, for example, for solar. So when we were trying to install a 5 kilowatt solar tracker system way back in 2007, we just could not do it because the utility company would not allow us to connect it to the grid. So it took us 2 years to get it sorted. So timing also in terms of what offerings are available. 20 years back, when we were doing the first ESCO projects in Dubai, that time there was only 1 or 2 companies. In fact, only one company offering ESCO. Today, there are multiple companies who will finance it. So it all really depends. So this is where you need to be, what do you call, flexible, understand what is working for your sister corporation or your competitor or your neighbor is not necessarily the same thing that will work for you. So you have to evaluate everything, and sometimes you need that specialized guidance to be able to put you onto the right track. No technology is good technology or bad technology. It really depends on the right fit application of it. So if you want to do a solar on on the rooftop of a tower on Sheikh Zayed Road, that is not the ideal place for solar. That does not make solar bad. But if you look at a warehouse and industrial facility in Jebel Ali, perfect place for solar. So, and then the solar industry has also evolved. So building automation, solar technologies are good. Commercial, structures are available where you don't have to put in the money. But at the same time, you have to look at what is the right fit for you at what time of your life cycle.
Perfect. Perfect. Fine. Hearing all this that all three of you have said brings me to the question, must electricity cost saving necessarily be a technology issue? Can it not be turned on its head? Is there not another way to look at it? The human social way. Why social? Because socially we are all responsible, with climate change staring us in the face. Why humanly? Because ultimately it is humans who are consuming electricity. So there's an interesting concept of making every consumer an energy manager with solutions that are low capex, but with high savings. How can this work? Are there examples where this approach is actually working? What are the typical capex outlays in that case, vis-a-vis the high capex investment in technology products? What are the payback periods? And are there other benefits to the client business also? Sagatha, I know you've been doing some work in this area with a unique methodology. Could you tell us in the audience something about this?
So allow me to connect some of the dots that both Dilip and Mohammed mentioned. Mohammed mentioned rightly, yes, there are fantastic automation systems available, technologies available. You just plug it, you go into the cloud, you can do a lot of things. And a lot of these buildings are actually coming with those systems. And then Dilip mentioned that if you really look at some of these systems, and way back in the December of 2011, I had the fortune of sitting down with Mr. Hussein Lutha, who was the Director General of Dubai Municipality at that time. And we were trying to sell energy management to him for Dubai Municipality. And he made a statement which was an eye-opener for me. And he said that 80% of the installed building automation systems in Dubai do not function. I do not know from where he got that information, but that seemed to be quite authoritative. And eventually, I think Dilip will corroborate this as a facility management service provider, that many of the installed systems are not really operational the way they were originally designed in terms of maintenance, in terms of the way they operate. The technology was there, and this is where Mohammed must be a long-standing sufferer, where his fantastic systems must be in buildings, but the building owner, in terms of cutting cost, has not bothered to engage him in the annual maintenance contract. So obviously, the sensors have fallen through, the devices may not be functioning well. So how do you go and operate them? So the whole point of, trying to reactivate the existing technology that is already there in the buildings, the existing manpowers, who the technicians on site who actually know the building like the back of their hand, how to bring them all alive and reactivate resources which are already present on the ground. So this is where the concept of making every consumer an energy manager comes in, where you essentially, everybody is informed about energy management, but most people are not educated or trained about that. And in my 20 years of working in Dubai, I've realized the most important player in energy conservation is the technician at site. And I personally, in spite of all my degrees from IIT, have actually learned more from the technicians at site in terms of how to save energy. All they need is the right guidance, the right motivation. The right tools are in any case already there in the facilities. And if you can just activate those resources, you can actually achieve or realize multiple benefits. One, you're activating your existing resources at site. You can actually protect jobs as well, because these are the same people who you need to retain. But unfortunately, you're not able to retain and you're having to fire them because of cost cutting. So if they can help you generate cost savings in another area, you can always retain them. You can upskill them and you're able to deliver these savings. And typically any cost for some programs like this would be paid back in less than a few months' time. So you have situations where low capex, where that can be recovered in a few months' time. And once you have a positive cash flow, then you go and look at how do you upgrade the existing infrastructure with better technology, with the formula in mind that you always want to stay ahead in the cash flow curve. So the whole trick is how do you achieve the positive cash flow as soon as you can, and then you keep integrating different technologies, different resources, different techniques to keep enhancing the savings. Uae Energy Strategy 2050 says that you need to reduce, the target is to reduce energy consumption of buildings and individuals by 40%. When you're talking about 40% reduction target, you're looking at deep energy retrofits. And some of those deep energy retrofits will cost money. They can be financed in some cases, or you could have a long-term roadmap from 2021 to 2050 that you can organically build that up to reduce your current energy bills by 40% by the time you reach 2050 or even before that. So there are multiple ways of doing things. It's all about horses for courses, working in an integrated manner with the building owner, the site technicians, the facility management company, as well as technology providers. So you have to bring all of this together.
Very interesting perspective, but can I request you to close as soon as you can now, because we are running out of time.
So that was my last sentence anyway.
Right. No, thank you. That's an absolutely dramatic, very, very different perspective and a very different point of view. We have a few questions from the audience, which I'm going to take up now. The first, I suspect, is right up Mohammed's interest area. The question comes from Balaji Patsarthi, and he asks, the implementation of energy conservation measures in a building is usually decided by an owner or an owner representative. From the RERA perspective, what provisions can be made or are being made in RERA budgets to meet expenses or to devise a mechanism to share in a part of the savings within the ESCO company programs?
Correct.
Would you like to take that on, Mohammed?
Yeah, sure. Actually, RERA, I refer to it as the authorities. And this is a very big topic of the government and the authorities wherever we go. You can just in a very simple, fast way. If you are able to save energy in a district, which are the buildings are part of this district. So every building you are able to save whatever 20 or 30% on that buildings for all the district. So then you can imagine the substations which DIWA, for example, distribute energy to this district, you'll have a lot of spare capacity. And that going back, you'll be able to spare a lot of substations, spare a lot of budget spent in the government to these kind of substations with DIWA. So RERA, part of the government and part of DIWA, and at the end, they will be able to look at the holistic approach of Dubai. If they implement this energy saving, as Sagatha mentioned, with the target of Dubai, then they will be saving a lot of the projects going in the government and the expenditure there. So there is a lot of super ESCO, which we call, as part of the authorities and the government. They are authorized and mandated to go and save energy in the ministries and government buildings. and RERA as part of it. So this is supporting all initiatives of the ESCO companies, and we participate with them a lot.
Gautam, just a comment here. I think
Yes.
what probably the question is trying to ask is that as part of managing freehold projects, every year there's a budget which is made for managing the building, and we are supposed to get it approved from the Real Estate Regulatory Authority. The question is asking that whether can there be a provision made within the budget where we can have a certain cost line item referred to as a ESCO investment, where we can start managing energy, start managing energy of buildings. Good question. I mean, see, the way ESCO companies are available now, and correct me, Mr. Mohammed, if I'm wrong, they have a no cost basis investment available also to buildings. We have taken initiative in one or two buildings where we hired companies where they came and invested. No money was supposed to be paid from the budget. They invested themselves, and they had a 5-year return on investment program for themselves as well as for the building. So answering his question, that yes, it is a good idea that there could be a line item created within the budgets where that cost should go to hire companies to manage energy. Beyond that, there are companies available where you don't need that line item cost. You could just approach these companies, they'll come and invest and save energy.
Correct.
In fact, thank you.
Clarify this point also. Thanks for making it clear. This company exists in Dubai, for example, and in Abu Dhabi, so within UAE, and we see it also other countries. And they have that kind of line budget from RERA, or it could be from the government, which ESCO are benefiting from. As you mentioned also, there's a direct line between the ESCO and the users. So both options are available.
Right. In fact, Dilip, I must say Balaji's question was actually more directed to you than to Mohammed. And Sachin Sehgal has a question which I suspect is also more directed to you. He asks, don't you think that most of the energy management companies are focusing to save energy by enhancing the maintenance quality of equipment installed in the building, which he feels are being deteriorated by FM teams, and not adding any value to equipment? How would you react to that?
I mean, it's a good point, but as a FM company, I wouldn't want to agree.
Absolutely.
That we are not doing. But having said that, bottom line, yes, I have done facility management in various parts of the world, and I can tell you, we do work in UAE, we also do work in the UK. I can tell you the way the government has initiated of managing buildings here is incredible. The way they have put regulation on building, and when the buildings have been kind of commissioned, now RERA actually monitors, and we are supposed to hire a consultant, have a condition survey of the building, a snag report from a third-party consultant as to what are the snags in the building, and the developer or the owner is supposed to complete those snags before he gets a retention money from RERA. So that's the extent of commissioning of buildings monitors which is being done by the government. Coming back to the point whether FM companies are maintaining enough, I can tell you that after seeing the world on facility management, I see at a very good extent of managing, understanding asset life cycle and understanding what kind of elements are required to manage assets. Having said that, yes, there are equipments which get spoiled because of maintenance. And what the energy companies are doing, you're saying is that whatever has been spoiled by FM is they're just enhancing their efficiency. It's a tough one, in case the equipment have been deteriorated to an extent by improper maintenance. It's difficult to enhance the energy levels there, So I'm not sure whether energy managements can do that. Companies can do that. All energy management companies are doing, to my understanding, is they are putting controls and simpler controls to optimize energy. Yeah. For example, in one of the projects, the company just came and put occupancy sensor lighting. So in the FM company was not doing anything bad in terms of spoiling the lighting quality. Just that occupancy sensor made sure that the timing is right for the lighting to come on and come off. So they are taking basic elements to come and enhance the energy management of the building. And I also feel that, which I made a comment earlier, that if you balance the technology with the process, that's where you'll get the best element of control within building, to my experience on operating.
Thank you, Dilip. I only brought this question to your attention because there is a perception in the marketplace which is reflected by Sachin's question, and I thought it would be appropriate, for you to take this in the spirit in which it was asked. I have one last question from Abid Baidas, who asks, sustainability's biggest hurdle is associated with consumers' mindset almost everywhere. How could energy industry leaders change the culture? And what initiatives are out there? And what type of initiatives that could be brought to accelerate change? If I may answer that, Abid, we've heard a lot about how technology product producers, as represented by Mohammed, are now bringing in elements that go beyond the technology of the products that they sell. They're talking about financing, capex, etc., etc. Sugato presented a very interesting perspective on how you can do similar cost savings on the electricity platform with low capex, but ensuring high savings. And then there is the Uae Energy Strategy 2050, which I'm happy to share with you later, which explains exactly how industry leaders in the UAE are looking at the problem. I would like to thank Dilip, Mohammed, and Sugato now for a very interesting and informative session. And I'm glad we stayed effectively within our framework of about an hour or so, 30 to 45 minutes. But clearly to me, the time is now to look at conscious saving on the electricity platform. Yes, there is great green stuff, eco-friendly stuff. There is climate change fight back. But even on a money platform, on a commercial platform, if many times Mohammed alluded to commercial buildings. Now, if I have a commercial building where my annual electricity bill is of the order of 3 million dirhams, and I'm able to save 10% of that, which is 300,000 dirhams, that's 300,000 dirhams gone straight to my profit line, my bottom line, into my pocket. And I have 300,000 dirhams to be able to spend in areas in which I was not able to earlier. Now, who doesn't want that? It's very, very welcome. And as we've heard today, you can do this with high capex technology products if you have the financial capability to be able to operate those. You are also able to turn to your technology product provider, and he is willing to look at offering you financing packages. And then you have the opportunity to look to internalize the process with low capex, where your employees are trained in order that they may take ownership in the electricity cost saving process itself. With that, I thank IBPC for organizing this webinar, our panel participants, Dilip, Mohammed, and Sugato, for their time and inputs, and for the audience for your time and interest. I hope we will all leave this session with some good new ideas, or at least some thoughts on where we can go with electricity cost saving in our businesses itself. Some practical methods, different, I'm sure, for different individuals, for different companies, but save money on electricity, which goes straight to a booty that you can utilize to be able to invest in things that you wanted to, but not been able to for some time. Thank you, and back to you now, Dilip, Mr. Sinha.
Yeah, first of all, I know that the time is up, and thank you, and well moderated, Gautam. And I would like to thank all the audiences for being there and the questions. Dilip Khatwani, my colleague from IBPC, Mohammed, the ex-colleague from Honeywell, Sagatha, a good friend. I think all of you have made valuable point. Energy is about, it's about, we talked about operating cost, but also we have a responsibility towards the climate, reducing the carbon footprint. So while it goes a long way in saving the operating costs, improving our profitability, it's also goes a long way in reducing the carbon footprint. We should not forget that. So it's all our collective responsibility to do that, engage in that at our homes, at our buildings, at our commercial enterprises everywhere. And that's why the education of the operators is also important, the people who operate, as well as each one of us. So once again, thank you all very much, and look forward, IBPC looks forward to bringing more such important sessions in near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.